My name is Sean Rubin, author of Bolivar, and you're watching Author's Voice.
Welcome to Author's Voice, connecting authors to the world. This is LadyBird and Friends, and I am your host, Betsy Bird. Today, we are talking about a lovely little book called Bolivar. It is by Sean Rubin. It is coming out, and we would like to thank Archaea Press, and it is about $29.99 in case you were interested. To my immediate right, your left, is Sean Rubin. Hello. He has written many a fine book. He has done illustrations for Redwall. He has done Mouse Guard. He has also recently sold the film rights to this book, Bolivar, which we will be talking about today. So thank you so much for coming on, man.
Thank you for having me.
It is so lovely to have you. Oh, couple quick notes before we get any further. If you are watching this on Facebook Live or on our website, please use the comment section to submit a question. Include your name and where you're from, and most importantly, if you would like to get a signed copy of this book today, you can go to authorsvoice.net and you can get your copy sent to you. Easy peasy. That's all you need to do. So, I guess my first question for you is, so what is this book? What is this book about? What is this?
It's about a dinosaur that lives in New York City because he does not want anyone to notice him.
I see. And in living, I should say, we have talked about this book before. So some of my once or twice. So I may like appear to have like preternatural knowledge on some of these subjects. So and yes, so I lived in New York City, and in my experience, people very much walk around not noticing anything around them whatsoever. Was that the gist that sort of got you into inspiring you to make this book in the first place? Or what sort of interested you and got you to make this book?
Well, it was actually this toy, which I brought here. It's an old toy from the 1980s.
Why don't you lift that puppy up?
Yeah, sure. Based on a painting at Yale in the Peabody Museum called Age of Reptiles. In the 1930s, this is what people thought dinosaurs looked like. Now we pretty sure they had feathers and walked very differently. This is called a pot-bellied T-Rex. I got this toy when I was a kid, and my cousin Edward Adio decided that he would make the dinosaur talk, and named him Bolivar.
And why did he name him Bolivar?
I've asked Uncle Eddie this a number of times, and he says he just thinks you look like a Bolivar.
He just looks like Bolivar?
That's it? I don't know. So he's a very creative guy. I agree with him. I think he does look like Bolivar.
I think he does, yeah.
And so Bolivar would go on all these crazy adventures, and one day he became the mayor of New York City, and he held a press conference, and he was very concerned that there would be pushback, that people wouldn't want a dinosaur for a mayor, and I think, you know, he was surprised to learn that nobody seemed to care very much at all. And I went home and thought, that's pretty funny, I'm going to write a book about that. And I thought it would be about, I don't know, 32 pages.
Right. And, like the size of a picture book.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
it was going to be a sort of funny, you know, quick little book. And I started writing, and I realized that, you know, if there was a dinosaur in New York, no one would really care or notice. And the idea of the dinosaur living on the Upper West Side and sort of walking around and going different places was much more interesting than just him sort of becoming mayor for a day. Although that stayed in the story anyway. But I started thinking about that character and following him around the city, wondering, you know, what does he like to eat? Where does he like to go? What kind of music does he like? And the book really came from that.
Oh, that's cool. Now, you mentioned you originally thought of this as a picture book. And if anyone's looking at this, it looks like it's a picture book. Picture books are about, what, 9 by 9?
Turn it that way.
And then, whoa, yeah, oh, look at that. Look at all those pages here.
We're going to be here for a while.
We are. We're going to read the whole thing aloud. No. How many pages is it altogether?
224.
224, and gorgeous, I have to say. A really, really beautiful book, which I don't actually get to say enough when I'm talking about books. But what would you call it? Like, what kind of book is it?
My wife actually, I think, has the best term for it, which is a picture chapter book.
A picture chapter book.
Yeah. Although I think really it's a graphic novel. It's probably a fair term for it.
Yeah, I've
But,
been
yeah.
calling it a picture book graphic novel hybrid, but even
That
when
works.
you say that, we have picture books that have like comic elements in them
Yeah.
these days, and they're still 32 pages.
Right.
Whereas this is far more on the novel side of the graphic novel spectrum, I'd say.
It's sort of a picture book that's novel length and has 5 chapters, but
Yeah.
has graphic elements in it.
Right.
So
And it's interesting. I think when you were originally making this as a picture book, was the text for the most part the same?
So there's voiceover in the book, which is just usually black text on white pages. That was the original picture book text, and I think it was like 1,200 words or something. And when I decided to expand it into a graphic novel, what I added was the dialogue, which was all the speech balloons and whatnot, the panels.
That makes sense. And then, yeah, so, but then the dialogue is entirely new, which makes sense in the graphic novel format. Why did you, I mean, I know that you chose it to be a dinosaur because you have the dinosaur toy and everything. Were you ever tempted to change it to a different creature of some sort?
Well, the thing about dinosaurs is that they were real at some point.
Right, there is that, yes.
So
yes.
it's somehow, maybe this could have happened, although it couldn't have.
Sure, it could totally happen.
Right.
I've been to New York, yeah. Yeah, you could have a dinosaur living in a brownstone easily. Which is one thing I really love about this book is that I have read some kids' books set in New York where it feels like the author took a day, went to New York, sort of got a general gist of the place, and then decided to like illustrate a book, and then fills it with things like alleyways. There are no alleyways in New York City, and you know, and like the subway makes no sense, like the way the characters go, like the path makes no. And so I'm very nitpicky when it comes to these things. This felt completely authentic to the point where I was trying to identify like subway stops and grocery stores near subway stops and things like that. So, I mean, did you make this mostly when you were in New York or not?
Well, thank you. I certainly tried to do that as much as possible. There are some fudges. They're on purpose. For example, the grocery store is sort of 2 grocery stores at the same time.
What are the 2 grocery stores?
Okay, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on live television.
You can say it.
Zabar's and Fairway. So the outside
so it
is Fairway.
Okay.
And then the inside is
Oh,
Zabar's.
okay, that makes more sense because the outside does look like Fairway.
Right.
You're right. Okay.
But-
Because I lived around that area too, so I was being like, where? Yeah.
Well, it takes place on West 78th Street for the most part. I lived on West 80th Street for 2 years, and then West 96th Street for another 2 years.
Okay.
So that was my neighborhood. I walked around it a lot. The other thing that really bothers people is that I put there's a stop for the 1 on Columbus Avenue, which of course doesn't exist. But
that's true.
yeah.
I did not notice that actually.
It got called out in at least one like.
Oh really? So one person, like some New Yorker, is like, you put a 1.
Right. No, it's like this is clearly this person doesn't. Like actually that was on purpose. I needed a subway stop there. I didn't need them to have So
the 1 makes sense. It would be the 1.
Right.
If there was one there.
Except that the subway station actually looks like the subway station for the B and the C.
I did notice that you did create a mural that doesn't exist, and so I had to like sort of tap down my New Yorker instincts and be like,
doesn't it though?
I was like, but that's not a real mural. Like, of course it's not a real mural. It's fine. Yeah. I can't find it now.
But the book was really researched and written when I was living on the Upper West Side. It was mostly illustrated, like I'm physically sitting down and drawing it when I lived in Charlottesville, Virginia, and that was actually it was interesting for me to do that because in a lot of ways I was drawing from memory after a while.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean I had research and I had a lot of photo references and other things, but you rely on memory at least to get the emotion or the sense of the place more. And I actually I realized in the process of doing that I really wasn't relying on my memories from my 20s when I lived there. I was relying on my memories when I was Sybil's age.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So is the Central Park in this your Central Park when you were a kid?
I think so.
Yeah.
Definitely the museum is more what it was when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And that's why people have said, hey, it doesn't really look like it's any particular decade. I think it's something to do with it.
Yeah, now it's interesting. Now I'm like desperately trying to be like, do they use, I mean, there are cell phones, I suppose.
No cell phones in the whole book.
There's no cell phones in the whole book? Doesn't the mom talk on one? Oh, see, I can't even remember it correctly. All right, and then, and then the press corps all has like, the press corps has like the 1940s.
Right,
like,
but they're on laptops.
But they're on laptops, exactly.
There's no smartphone because it was just kind of too easy. Everybody's looking down. I mean,
well, and also because of smartphone ages. Like
Right,
I have
exactly.
read more kids books recently that came out 10 years ago, and it's like they're all flip phones, and it's like, ugh,
Yeah.
this is already dated information. And
I'm banking that the laptop's going to hang around a little while.
I think the laptop
Yeah.
is pretty safe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you should have them all like on like big 1980s like cell phones. I would love to see that in a kid's book, by the way, where everyone talks on big 1980s cell phones.
Well, he's got a rotary phone.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
and that's classic. You can
Yeah.
always do. Because
Yeah.
I swear there are rotary phones in New York City. You just have to look.
Yeah.
There's
okay.
still phone booths there.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
old.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Was this your first solo project that you did
Yeah.
entirely, wrote, illustrated,
Mhm.
everything? Had you written anything before? I know you
I
illustrated.
have.
your
Hasn't been
work.
published.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. All right.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things in the drawer, so we'll see where that goes in the next
Right.
few years. Yeah.
Right. But this was the first like wrote and illustrated.
Mhm.
So how did you convince your publisher? Because this does not slot into the categories of like when the librarians are trying to catalog their books. They're like, this is picture book, this is graphic novel, this is picture book, this is graphic novel, and then they get to your book. And this is speech balloons graphic novel. I mean, that's probably going to be the easiest call for them. But I just call it a bedtime book because it's a perfect book to read at bedtime. In
I think
a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
The publisher's Boom now is Archaea is an imprint of Boom.
Mm-hmm.
The way it worked is that they were really interested in doing experimental books when the project started, and this was something that they were very excited about, despite the fact that they didn't. They weren't familiar with actually publishing a book quite like this. They had done a book called Return of the Dapper Man.
Oh, I've heard that title. Yeah. Yeah.
Which was sort of, hey, if we take a graphic novel that looks like a picture book, what does that look like? And then they've also done Mouse Guard, which, I mean, in my opinion, is also...
You know what? Mouse Guard is very similar in terms of just the size.
The size and also sort of...
And the content.
Right, and then like never doing any more than 3 rows of panels and things.
Yep.
So there was a sense of you could create this kind of work for children and it works, and I thought they were a really good fit. And I mean, they were very excited to do it, yeah.
Yeah, okay, well that makes sense. Yeah, because otherwise I can see you like taking this to a standard like Scholastic or some publisher and then being like, yeah, no, full color, no, we don't, full color, no, you can get it in black and white, yeah, lovely glossy black and white, but no, this is entirely full color, which I love it so much.
They really like doing books like that, and
Yeah.
it was sort of a no-brainer.
Yeah. Now the cross-hatching here, because there is so much cross-hatching in this book. It's like Maurice Sendak on steroids. Like what you're welcome. That's a compliment.
Yeah. I was trying to figure out how to respond to that, and I think thank you is the appropriate response.
Yes, that's a thank you, exactly. But I mean, how did you make this art?
The cross-hatching, or?
Yeah, well, all of it, the whole schmozzle.
I like cross-hatching. I mean, it seems like a trite thing to say, but I really like cross-hatching. I think it's great. You could use it to get both texture. Well, you get texture, volume, which is to say, you know, how you're actually showing a shape. You know, it gives you the contour on the surface of the shape. And then you also can value, so light and dark, and do shading with it. So you're able to do at least 3 things at once with it, which makes it kind of unusual. I've done other styles, although less and less now, because whenever I submit anything to an art director that doesn't have extensive cross-hatching, it gets sent back and asks for more cross-hatching.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we have more cross-hatching on this.
They just have like a cross-hatching stamp. They just stamp on your art, like, yeah.
It's happened with almost every art director I've worked with in the past 5 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Isn't it incredibly time-consuming?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So just like, no, you need to do more with the linies that go like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, man. I had some sort of, oh, here, I found it. There we go. Here's the mural. The mural that doesn't actually exist, but that's okay. Yeah. So when you were a kid, what did you read?
A lot of Redwall, Lord of the Rings later. And I wasn't super into picture books, as in like I would read through a stack of picture books. I liked them, and I have favorite picture books that I've kept. But the thing I used to consume a lot of was nonfiction books. So especially those DK illustrated dictionaries. And things like that. Like, you know, you'd find any book on a topic. Like, for some reason, I remember there was a book about the Titanic. It had like a diagram of the Titanic, and then a map of where the voyage was, and then, you know, a timeline of what happened on the Titanic. And anything, if you had a map and a diagram and a timeline, that was my favorite book.
Right.
So, yeah, read a lot of that. That type of book, David Macaulay books.
Yes.
The Cathedral. Yeah.
Cathedral, Castle, Pyramid. Yeah, it's amazing. I have kids of my own now, and I'm like, oh, these kids are going to be so bored. We have Castle, and like my 4 and 7-year-old are just like poring over like, so how did the toilet work? And I'm like, well, there's a picture right here.
The garden. Yeah, yes,
exactly.
I know that illustration quite well.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
we all know that illustration super well. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I love David Macaulay. He's so good. What graphic novels did you read as a kid? Or comics? I'm sorry, they weren't called graphic novels back then. Comics.
Well, I read a lot of newspaper comics. So collections, Calvin and Hobbes. My great-great-aunt had a stack of Snoopy books that were sort of yellowing from the 1960s.
Yeah.
That were still in the parlor of her house. I remember reading through those and Garfield collections and some other things sort of mixed in there that we get from the library. I think it was like the 700 section, of course.
Yes, it's the 741.59.
There you go. Ask a librarian.
Because my stupid library still has it under the 741.59.
I used to make a beeline there.
Recently, yeah.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. We just recently pulled out our comics and gave them their own section because it's 2018.
Fair enough.
So,
yeah.
No,
but it was because she would. This is the thing with libraries, is the most interesting thing is often right next to the thing you thought you were looking for.
Yes.
So if I was interested in finding Peanuts collections, they would have Walt Kelly or Harold Gray, which is Little Orphan Annie. And so, I was probably 7 or 8 and reading through old Annie comics from like the 1930s, which is really sort of bizarre, often somewhat violent stuff.
Well, a lot of that was like the Dick Tracy stuff.
Right, exactly.
Was a lot of like,
really
let's just
somewhat
shoot
dark.
people.
Yeah.
That's just like, why pussyfoot around it? Or just bang bang.
Yeah. But it was, they were trying to tell a pretty extensive story.
Yeah, they were
Unlike,
so, they were lavish and long, and you pity the people who would get the paper and would miss one, and I'm sorry, that's
I don't
gone.
know how you would deal with
You're
that.
never going to see that
Good
again.
point.
Yeah.
GoComics.com.
Exactly.
I read a lot of those, and it's very interesting. It's if you like drawing pictures, comics are a great way to draw pictures because you just always have to draw more pictures.
That makes sense.
So it's a great way to tell stories.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you one more question because we actually got a bunch of questions here from people. So I am going to ask you this, but let me just ask you one more myself. What kind of reactions have you gotten to the book from kids?
From kids?
Well, from kids and from adults, I'm going to say.
Well, I got a very shining review from the Fuse 8 blog.
Oh, I've heard of that one.
Yes.
It is great.
Yes, I completely agree.
Yes.
The reaction has been very positive. And the thing that a number of people have told me, and I probably appreciate this more than anything, is that they give it to their kid, and their kid is basically sitting in the back of the car or on the couch for the next 45 minutes, just reading through the whole thing. And this has been the first long book that a number of children have read. I happen to know.
Oh, that's amazing.
Wow. Which is, it's wonderful to hear something like that.
So it's a gateway book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. All right, well, here are the actual questions. We actually have some questions. These are from Magistra Rubin's, her students, grades 3 through 6. And these are very good questions. In fact, these are such good questions that I'm feeling a little ashamed that I didn't ask them myself. So I may have to just co-opt these in the future. Does Bolivar know Latin?
This is
the dinosaur. Does he know Latin?
I have a feeling that I know where this came from.
It's a little out of the blue.
Yes, exactly. Probably not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's mostly been...
He might know some Yiddish.
Oh, nice. Yes.
Actually.
Well, and we should say that he subsists almost entirely on corned beef sandwiches. Right?
And tonic water. Which
and
he drinks
tonic
with wine.
water, yes.
Yeah.
And does he eat the little pickles that come with the corned beef sandwich, or does he not eat the little pickles?
I think he does.
Yeah.
But
they're always there.
They're always
in
there.
that little thing, and
Yeah.
I was always afraid of them. I did not.
Actually,
I did not partake.
in an early draft, pickles were mentioned.
Oh, really?
But it didn't. It was like the food and the drink. We didn't have to worry. I think there were like new pickles were mixed in there.
Okay, so you've excised the pickles since then.
Yeah, but I think but they're still in the illustrations. Yeah, so
Yeah, okay.
I would assume
Well,
he
then
eats
that
them.
counts. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, that's the first tough question. The next tough question: why did you pick corned beef on rye for Bolivar's diet?
It's a related question.
It is a related
Yes.
question. See?
Okay.
See how I'm doing that? I'm like looping them in together.
Corned beef sounds funny.
It does.
Yeah.
Especially, and if you've never seen a corned beef sandwich,
Right.
Someone might think that you were exaggerating, and to a certain extent you were, because when he eats a corned beef sandwich, oh boy, can I find the picture of it? It is, yeah, I don't know if you can see that, but you can see it's just It's just the tallest corned beef sandwich any creature in the world has ever seen. But it's not that much of an exaggeration when you get a corned beef sandwich.
Sort of a Dagwood-style sandwich. It's another comment.
It's a Dagwood-style sandwich, exactly.
No, it's, funny thing about that, the corned beef was probably in the first draft, and the sandwich was in the first draft, and it was just like a Carnegie Deli-style sandwich. It was about this big. It kept on getting bigger and bigger and bigger, although there's a certain point where you've drawn too much meat and it kind of looks weird. So then you have to make it a cartoon, like Dagwood sandwich, and you're kind of fine. There's probably a bell curve that we could examine at some point.
Like here is like the rate of like weirdness of the sandwich, and here is how tall it is. Yeah,
but
exactly.
It was actually my wife's suggestion, my wife Lucy, to make the thing enormous.
Yeah,
so I was just thinking,
he's a freaking dinosaur.
Right,
he's going to need a lot of corned beef.
It was a good point, and it was not as funny as it could have been until we made it that cartoon, like meat stack. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
And it's very New York. Like if you're going to have him eat something with a lot of meat, he could just eat a bunch of hot dogs, but that's been done 500 times.
You go to delis in New York, if people aren't familiar with this, you go to delis in New York and they will routinely just give you a pound of meat between two pieces of rye bread.
Because they think a human being can eat that.
Right.
And they are wrong.
I've done it more than once.
Okay.
But that's very common in the delis, at least that's the style of food there. So the idea of having 10 pounds of meat is, for this dinosaur, it makes a sort of sense.
Oh, sure. Yeah. That's logic. Yeah. That's science.
Yes.
Exactly. All right, here's the next one. Are you going to make a stuffed animal Bolivar, like Curious George?
That's a great question. Some people have actually asked for that.
He's so cuddly.
Yeah.
He's so round. Like we're looking at the dinosaur here, and I wonder if I can actually get a good picture of him here. But when you actually see him, he's a very rounded form. His head is almost, well, I think you once told me that it's Snoopy-like.
Snoopy-like, yeah. I mean, I could definitely imagine it, and we've been talking about possibly doing something like that. So clearly we're drumming up interest in this.
There you go, yeah. Oh, here's one. Why isn't Bolivar ferocious?
It's a good question.
And I don't know if they mean in the context of the story or your choices when making him. Like, why didn't you make him ferocious, or why isn't he, as a dinosaur, what has happened in his life to not make him ferocious?
Well, he's a New Yorker, and of course New Yorkers have this reputation for being sort of rude and aggressive, when in reality most of them just want to be left alone.
New Yorkers are only rude and aggressive when you have been rude and aggressive. They perceive that you have been rude and aggressive to them, and then they will
Absolutely. So that's probably something to do with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So, but though that is not to say that people are not rude to him. I mean, someone puts a parking ticket on him because they think he's a car. So that is, I would be a little peeved.
Yeah, fair
And then he has to call up City Hall, and they're giving him the run around there, and so he's got a real level personality. Why didn't you make the character vicious?
Well, gee whiz, who wrote these questions?
I don't know. Some 3rd through 6th grader.
The conflict in the story, I think, is really rooted in the fact that he doesn't act the way you would expect him to. So the fact that he's polite and kind and sort of retiring is unexpected, and as a result, people's reactions to him are out of place.
Right.
So, of course, without a conflict, you don't have a story.
Exactly. And it's easier to fit in if you are polite.
That's very true. I mean, if he was rude and if he was sort of a ferocious dinosaur, he would have a different life, I suppose.
If he was like Oscar the Grouch.
Right.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting.
It would be a different take.
Yeah, it would be a different take. I mean, I could totally see something like that.
Yeah, sure.
I wouldn't have.
It might even fit in better in some places.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. But
like doing that.
It would have been harder to hide, though.
Yeah, well, unless he was a cabbie.
I just got yelled at by that dinosaur on 5th Avenue. That is just sort of, somebody might notice that.
It might come up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is true. That is a good point. Final question from the kids here.
Sure.
Does Bolivar have a cat?
He does not.
He has no pets at all. Well, it even says at one point that he was asked when he moved in whether or not he'd be having any pets, but the forms didn't even mention dinosaurs.
Yeah. Dogs or cats, I thought, actually.
Yeah, the form said you couldn't have any dogs or cats in the apartment. So he couldn't have one even if he wanted to have one. Oh, that's sad. I hope he doesn't want one. I hope he's cool with not having a cat in New York City.
My sense is that he's actually allergic. Yeah.
That makes sense. Now, are there going to be any sequels to this?
There may be. We're doing a look and find book.
Ooh, those are fun.
Which is going to hopefully come out within the next year and a half. And then we've talked about doing another book with the characters a little bit longer. Certainly my publishers and also probably my wife and kids don't really want me to start a 5-year project right now. After
Of another one this size, yeah.
So that may be a little bit longer coming out. But
do you think it would go faster since now you've got some of the bones down, or do you think it would take just as long to make a sequel? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I've heard varying reports from people who've tried to do similar things. Some people say it'll always go faster. Some people say it will take much longer the second time.
Right. So. And then, of course, I've been with graphic novelists who have who have been like, oh yeah, I made this entire graphic novel. Then I didn't like any of the art, so I chucked it all and started from scratch, which is terrifying to me.
I did that with the second chapter.
Did you really, with the entire second chapter?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do with the art when you've decided you're like? Do you store it somewhere?
I have some of it. I've given it to some people. I've kept some of it too. Actually, some of my favorite illustrations in the whole book, but it didn't work.
Right.
I had to get rid of it and do something else.
Okay.
So yeah, that happened. You'd be surprised. I mean, I always thought before I did this project that you really couldn't sort of fake through an illustrated project, and it turns out you can if you draw something very similar to what you should draw, not exactly like what you should draw.
Right.
So they were illustrations that, while they set the scene and had the characters, they weren't telling the story effectively when put together. So that's why they had to be removed.
Okay. And were there any like places you want to set this that you ultimately did not set this?
Yeah, there was actually second chapter. They were going to go to the top of the Empire State Building.
Oh, is that where they were going? Okay, that was in the second chapter.
Yeah, it was in the second chapter. Yeah, they were going to go to the top of the Empire State Building. I've actually never been to the top of the Empire State Building. I kept on meaning to do that.
And top of the rock, it's so much better.
I thought about doing that too.
It's so much better.
I thought that would be kind of like funny, maybe.
You can't see Central Park because the rock blocks.
Right.
Anyway,
the Empire State Building is more fun to look at.
It is, and everyone knows it more
than 30 Rockefeller Center. Anyway, so at any rate, it wound up being that we took that out, and the grocery store scenes, which were in the second chapter, went in instead.
Okay, so you exchanged an Empire State Building for a grocery store. That's fine.
Even swap.
I would even say that there was more to draw in a grocery store than
that's true.
On top of a big windy building.
Yeah, I was afraid of like redrawing. Was it Sector 9 or Sector 7?
Oh yeah, the David Wiesner book.
Yeah.
That is the only kids book. When I heard you say, I was like, my librarian brain was going like, what other children's books have the Empire State Building? Only Sector 9 is the only one that I could think of. Yeah.
I mean, I've read it, and it's beautifully illustrated, and
it is.
I guess you'd probably say I've looked at it, because you can't. Well, we could debate that.
Well, I don't think it has words. So,
right.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I just realized, he kind of already did that anyway.
Yeah, it was kind of done, though.
So,
you know,
nobody had done the illustrations in the grocery store yet.
Right.
So it seemed like it maybe.
And the Statue of Liberty is just like way far away from Upper Manhattan. You don't want to try to. It would be very awkward to try to work.
We did a 4-page story that actually takes place in the Statue of Liberty.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
That was in a Free Comic Book Day.
Oh, really?
2012. Yeah.
What year was that you did that?
2012.
2012. Okay.
I think so. Yes, or 2013.
Aw, that'd be nice. All right. Well, I think that's all I have. I think that's all the third graders have, or third through sixth graders. Sorry. But yeah. Well, thank you so much, man, for dropping on by here. And thank all of you for coming by. And remember, you guys can order your own book if you really want to. And it is a fantastic holiday gift. It is so lush and lovely and gorgeous. And the thick pages and the full color, there's nothing to compare to it. So definitely consider that. Once again, the book, just to remind you, is Bolivar. It's from Archaea, and thank you to them for allowing you to come on today, and it is $29.99. Coming up soon on Author's Voice, we have many, many fine, lovely programs that do not involve dinosaurs in any way, shape, or form, as it turns out. On Stranger Than Fiction, author Ace Smith comes to discuss One Wild Year of Baseball in The Pitcher and the Dictator, which is such a good title. With host Bjorn Skeptison. And that will be tomorrow on September 14th at 3 p.m. On A House Divided, author John, you will have to forgive me for trying to pronounce his name, Hulskamp, also joins Bjorn Skeptison to answer your questions about Friends of the Wigwam, when that will be on Thursday, September 20th at 3 p.m. And then back on Stranger Than Fiction on Tuesday, September 25th, we're going to have author and New Yorker cartoonist Ken Krimstein to tell us about his new graphic novel, The Three Escapes of Hannah Arendt. So you can join us here at 3 p.m. And you can ask questions and order signed copies at authorsvoice.net. And of course, if you are watching this on YouTube, after the broadcast, you can still order signed books. There's just a little link under the title where you can do that. So that is about it. Thank you, Sean. And thank you guys at home.